Good evening. The Ranter is back to go into yet another rambling diatribe in the news of the day. And we are 2 weeks out from Election Day. And early voting has already begun. For certain states, records are being broken as to how many people are going and voting early. Some say that some states are breaking heavy in the early voting for Democrats, and some say that, quite frankly, they're breaking heavy for Republicans. And in the very abstract of this is a good thing for both sides. This is a good thing for America. Regardless of it being heavy for voting for Democrats or heavy voting for Republicans, this is a good thing as Americans that people are going out enthusiastically supporting their voice and putting their vote in. Now, I've been debating personally upon what I was going to do for this particular video, since so many news bits has come by since the last time I did the Ranter Matt. And I don't know if I really want to go into any real definitive stories. I mean, usually, obviously, I am a bent critic of Donald Trump. Call it Trump derangement syndrome or not. Actually, I could consider that to be both ways, because I've certainly seen plenty of people who take Trump derangement syndrome to the other side of it, and being so sympathetically pro-Trump to the point of deifying him as a religious icon. I tend to think that also is a little bit of Trump derangement syndrome, just on the other side. And as I make no illusions of the fact that I consider him an unqualified, disqualified piece of shit to ever get near the White House ever again, I don't know if I really want to go into the latest stories upon him, really, in terms of him and his apparent favoritisms of the romantic vision of Hitler and his generals, as is coming up in a book, I believe, The Divider. I think that's what it's going to be called. Essentially, the assertions from John Kelly and others, where it talks about where Trump pretty much asked, why can't his generals be like the German generals? To which John Kelly tried to you mean the Bismarck or the Kaisers? No, I mean Hitler's. No, that's just no. There's no good thing to say about Hitler. Does he know that? Of course he doesn't know that. And you can go into that back and forth about that, and bring up that this shouldn't be anything new. Just because this is another instance that is just another link in the chain of all the other instances that we've heard about him either speaking of Hitler, or speaking like Hitler, or speaking fascist-wise, or even going back to the older news of when Ivana Trump, his very first wife, talked about him having Mein Kampf next to his bed. But all that doesn't really, not that it doesn't matter, but I don't think that moves the needle like anything else seems to be not moving the needle. And that's actually what I really want to talk about. On paper, in a sane world, this election should not be close. On paper, in a sane world, where we have responsible adults that care about this country, they take the two challengers for the presidency of the United States, unabashed, without bias, take a look at the track records, take a look at the rhetoric, take a look at what they have done and what they have not done. They can certainly look at Donald Trump and see the examples of his first run as president for 4 years, and extrapolate it from what his rhetoric and what he wants to do since from there on out. In a sane world, this should not be close. But it is close. And as someone who's always going to be an avid critic of him, I still recognize the fact that no matter how Trump derangement I am, I do not have blinders on to the fact that he still has a very good chance of winning the election. And what I want to understand is why. Is this something that Kamala Harris is not doing? Because Kamala Harris, like any other human being, especially a human being in politics, does not have a sterling record, a sterling history that people can look back on and say that this is a no-brainer. That there are things in her history, not only in her political history, but in the history that she has as an attorney general, that can give people pause. Ironically enough, could give people pause more on the left as opposed to the right. But nonetheless, when we see her now doing interviews and now doing rallies, she's getting better and better and better in how she interacts with people. When she first started out doing her rallies, when she was tapped to take the baton, as I've been using this metaphor a lot, in this relay race of the presidency, first from Biden, who passed it off to Kamala Harris, and then Kamala Harris is running with it. And one of the things I noticed about her interviews, when she started getting more and more interviews, was that she did have a uniform, scripted set of answers, set of talking points, which are good. I'll not say that they're not good. They are good. However, it does lend to the credence of she's not good on her feet. That she has to think about things, that she doesn't really ad-lib too far from the script. She has been improving. The more interviews that she has, and the more interviews that she has that is not in safe space zones. Because she did do 60 Minutes. She did do the Fox News interview. As also doing the more fluffy stuff that people condemn her for some reason. Like Donald Trump in any of his rapidly decreasing interviews that he's been doing, which is they're going down, even though she claims she's the one that's exhausted, but never mind that now. He doesn't seem to do any interviews outside of friendly, safe spaces from people who will treat him sycophantically. Some people who will treat him like they're actually nursing home attendants trying to guide one of their nursing home residents back to their room. If you saw the rally that he did, I think in Michigan, with Christine Knowles. That was the one where he's half the time. It was supposed to be a Q&A, but at some point he stopped the Q&A because he just wanted to listen to music. Sway. Ave Maria. Bigly. Yeah. At the end, she's asking him in a type of tone of voice that you would think a nursing home nurse would go, "Do you want to hear your music now? Do you want to hear your music now? We have your music set up. Or you want to hear your music now?" This is what you want as President of the United States. Again. See, again, I could go into the news. I can go into presenting these visual aids to show that he is in decline, that he's deteriorating. He's freaking disintegrating in front of people. But I don't want to bring that up as much as I just did just now. The one things I've been confused about is his obsession with Kamala Harris working at McDonald's, which she said she didn't. She never worked there. You never did. And so he went and did a little photo op of him at McDonald's, where he put on a little apron, took off his coat, and manned the fries for about 15 minutes at a closed McDonald's, where the people that he was handing food out to were screened Trump supporters. Incidentally, this particular McDonald's was busted prior to this event over health code violations, things that they were having trouble with that they're trying to improve upon. And the co-workers were not all that pleased of having Trump there cosplaying as he was like one of their own, where he wasn't in a proper uniform, not wearing proper gloves while handling the fry machine. Didn't have a hairnet for his little rat nest that he has there. But apparently the stunt worked for some. I don't understand how, but again, this strange obsession that he has with her and McDonald's, and him saying, "Well, I worked here 15 minutes more than she ever did." What does it matter? She worked at McDonald's in 1983 when she was a kid, just getting enough money so she can go to Howard. So, why? Maybe because he feels it's a personal betrayal to him that his favorite restaurant once employed a young girl at the time, Kamala Harris, and so he has to he's emotionally scarred by this. But again, in a sane world with responsible people in it, in this country, that type of behavior would be disqualifying for a super serious position as being the commander-in-chief of our armed forces to being the nominal head of our country. To be put in a position of ultimate power in these United States, relatively speaking, because checks and balances still do exist. Even though the Supreme Court has just given him a blank check to do any official acts and he'll have complete immunity. Yeah, king, great. But unfortunately, we are not living in a sane, responsible world, apparently. And I want to understand why. And I'm not really addressing this to MAGA supporters, MAGA Trump supporters, those who buy the swag and is sycophantically all but worshiping him. I'm not asking them. I will leave them alone. I'm leaving them alone on this. What I'm asking is those people who, despite seeing this in front of them, still either have already done an early voting or is about to do, when they're going to turn their heads, just look at the screen long enough to know who to hit the button for, turn their nose, cover their mouth pretty much, and just hit Trump. Do they not see what everyone else sees? Do they not see him disintegrating in front of your eyes? For any criticisms of Biden when he was still in the race at his age, and after that debate, seeing that he was clearly in decline and you all jumped on it for, could be the right reasons but the wrong motivation because you're all having fucking fun over that. You do not see that in Donald Trump in a more profound, more animated way of seeing that decline? even he is kind of trying to explain away how he cannot have a full sentence that is connected to an original thought without it branching off into different directions and locations. He himself is addressing his decline in that, because he calls it when he does the weave. That's what geniuses do. It's the weave. I'm just weaving here because I'm a super duper stable genius. Yeah, a super duper stable genius that cannot hold a complete sentence and a complete thought in that sentence without it branching and diverging halfway through the sentence till it becomes something else, and maybe it will go back to that original thought. Now, I rant and ramble. Yes, I do. And sometimes it's coherent, sometimes incoherent. I mean, in my spiel going into here, rambling incoherently, right? Though I do at times realize I have to get myself back to the original point that I was trying to make. But he doesn't feel like he has to. He doesn't feel like he has to do anything. And he's a 78-year-old man who still has the emotional stuntedness of a 14-year-old who, according to people that analyze his speech patterns, has a 4th grade vocal articulation of his thought patterns. And this is what happens when you live in an environment where no one tells you no. No, you can't, or no, you're wrong. When John Kelly was trying to explain to him that Hitler's generals were trying to get him killed a number of times, that Erwin Rommel committed suicide after the failed attempt on Hitler's life, Trump denied it. No. No, they all loved him. They were completely loyal to him. Facts speak otherwise, but facts do not exist in Trump's world. If Trump is wrong on anything, he will never admit to it, and will blame you for daring to contradict him on your dare facts getting in the way to his fantasy reality. And here's the danger when it comes to Trump, is that not only he puts out this perceived reality, that he puts it out there, the sycophants and those beholden to Trump around him prop him up and says, yeah, you're right, boss. Yeah, that's exactly right, boss. And then they perpetuate it. So then he takes their support to his perceived reality and convinces himself it's right, because a lot of people say, all these people just said I'm right, so obviously I'm right. The sun will turn into a bran muffin next Tuesday. Could easily say that. So it's Trump on his own, isolated on his own, is not quite the danger. It's everyone around him who, for one sycophantic, one beholden reason or another, will sacrifice their own dignity, their own self-respect, their own thought process, their own reasoning abilities to prop up whatever bullshit he spews out of his mouth. And they prop it up. Like Brian Kilmeade on Fox and Friends actually was defending him, talking about he wants generals to be as loyal to him like the generals were for Hitler. Because it's about a business. He was running a family business and he's just frustrated. Kamala Harris was doing a town hall Q&A on CNN tonight. And she made a point which is also a no-brainer. And it's something that people, if they didn't think about it, should think about it. The majority of the cabinet-level people that worked under Trump do not want to see him back as president. Chief of Staff, Joint Chiefs, and Vice Presidents. Various down the line. I think the count was between 40 out of 44 of his cabinet level officials do not endorse him and do not want to see him to be president. Kamala Harris's point is, these people were close to Trump, worked with him on a day-to-day basis. They seen him. They see him behind closed doors. They see him in the meetings. Why are you not trusting their word on how he is? And this is one of the reasons why I'm doing this is, as I said, despite all of this, and not even scratching the surface of what I mean from all of this, Trump still has a good shot at winning the White House again, despite having pretty much the Supreme Court blank check on official acts, despite the fact that he says that he wants to be dictator for a day, despite the fact that he kept going on and on about the enemies within that Fox News tried to clean up, and Bret Baier tried to defend when Kamala Harris said that in their interviews, and he showed a clip that was not the clip that she was talking about, and she nailed his ass to the wall for showing the wrong clip. People like my governor, Glenn Youngkin, and Mike Johnson totally disassociates what Trump says is the enemy within, and that the people will need that they may need to have the National Guard or the military take care of them. That Mike Johnson says he was talking about the roving bands of migrants and illegals and criminals, and it's like, and Jake Tapper, who was the one he was interviewing, said no, he actually said the people that were against him, left-wing lunatics. He named one. He named Adam Schiff. He named Nancy Pelosi. And Mike Johnson refuses to even muses to go into that or acknowledge that, and that didn't happen. That's not what he meant. That's not what he meant. See, there's a new term called sane-splaining. It's kind of like mansplaining to women. When, so the big tough man has to explain something to the little lady, even though the little lady is probably as intelligent or even more intelligent than he is, and she perfectly understands what the fuck is going on. Be that as may. But sane-splaining is taking Trump's dribbling diatribe that is even more incoherent than mine, which is, how is that even possible, and try to explain it in sanity, in terms of sanity. They don't want to talk about how he, has to have this conversation about Arnold Palmer having a bit of girth to him in his penile area. And Mike Johnson just flinches at every time. Why do you keep bringing it up? Why did Trump bring it up? Now, again, Trump says this stuff now pretty much all the time. Trump will accuse Kamala Harris of things that people are accusing him of. So it's always a doth protest too much. And he's been doing this since even when he was against Hillary Clinton. When they accused him of being a bigot, he came out in a row and says, Hillary Clinton's a bigot! Which was like days after someone claimed him to be a bigot. I remember seeing that when he said that at rally in the 2016 election. This woman behind him goes. So, yeah. Whatever he gets accused of, he's going to shove it right back at Kamala Harris or any of his other political opponents. People who support him, who I'm going to give the pass that are not, not true Trump supporting, true Trump worshipping sycophants who I was assuming had at least some basis of reason and understanding and so forth, like Nikki Haley. She's still going out on X and propping him up and denigrating Kamala Harris as the worst thing that ever happened to our great republic ever. Because, if someone has to be worse than Trump, then they better be the most goddamn worst thing that ever happened in this society. But even as she's doing that, Trump publicly debases and shows her utter disrespect. Nikki Haley, Nikki Birdbrain Haley, and I don't want any help from her supporters. We don't want any of them. No support for them. Why? Why do you put up with that? I know Nikki Haley's never going to listen to this, but why? Why are adults, mature, responsible adults, just bending backwards for this man? Who go out of their way not to contradict him. And if there's any disagreements, it's the softest softball little snowball of a disagreement. Not a hard put down out of respect of reality. He disrespects Nikki Haley even as she is supporting him. There was one of these interviews, I think it was on Fox and Friends, when Trump showed up and they're all fawning over him again. Grampy was on there. Grampy was there, so we got to make sure Grampy is good, make sure he has a little blankie and so forth. They treated him like that. I'm sorry, folks. He's being handled. He's being handled by someone who should be in a nursing home. It's in front of your face. But one of these people asked him, Nikki, are you ever going to use Nikki Haley as a surrogate? Let her go out there, and because there was a segment of her voters that are going to Harris, the Nikki Haley voters for Harris. And his response was, maybe, but I totally crushed her. I didn't even give an effort. I was in court, but I still crushed her. What was the point of saying that? What was the necessary? In a mature adult, a 78-year-old man who's supposed to have the best mind, has all the best words, that knows everything knows everything more about war than generals, knows everything about anything, and if he doesn't know anything, then you certainly do not know anything, because everything is always the most. This is just the way it is. Everything is always the most. No, I never saw this before. You give it a topic, any topic, and you'll say something along those lines. Especially when things that he personally doesn't understand, which is a lot of things. Yeah, but he could have Nikki Haley on there doing adequate job of throwing support, but since she wasn't sycophantic enough, especially when she did her half-hearted attempt for the Republican nomination, he had no respect for her, so even while she is serving his will, he will crush her publicly. Alright, so here's the thing. It's going back to the premise of the whole point of me doing this. For people who dislike Trump, do not get complacent in thinking because he's deteriorating before your eyes that this is a slam dunk for Harris. It's not. It's not. Will she get the popular vote? Probably. Trump has never won the popular vote once. But Trump still is a idiot savant when it comes to perception. He lived his whole life trying to manipulate the perception, especially of his own life, in front of others. As much as he seems to not care what people think about him, he definitely thinks. He cares what people think about him. And he wants to steer it. He wants to control that perception. Whether it's real or really it's not real at all. But he wants to control it so that you don't think otherwise. So that you don't get close to the truth of the matter. And not only is it important to him, he makes it damn sure everyone around him that supports him and serves his will also thinks it's important. So that they, especially those people who are in the political sphere, who had political lives on their own, that they have to go to bat for him, that they will sacrifice their careers to go to bat for him, to back up any of his batshit crazy shit. That's redundant. Batshit crazy shit. Okay. But they will back it up at the cost of their own careers, their own livelihoods, their own physical representations, their own political appearance, personas. Tulsi Gabbard, now recently, because she had to come out and I guess show that she's more of a servant to Trump than Nikki Haley is, so I guess she's more valuable. She's come out and she's declared she's now joining the GOP. Okay. And people, bring her up and tout her and her Kamala Harris slaying abilities in the 2020 debate. Yep, that's great. And every time someone brings up Tulsi Gabbard, and I just go, okay, yeah. She totally trounced Kamala Harris, so much so that she got out of the presidential race, and then she got hired as a vice president. And what has Tulsi Gabbard been doing lately? She won the debate, and resulted in her losing her relevancy. Now she's a footnote. Now she's someone that you can have on one of OAN's or Fox News's those segments on one of their news shows, so they can talk about against the Democratic Party and so forth. So here's the thing then. I'm going back to my here's the thing. What will Democrats do if we wake up on November 6th, or beyond, and Donald Trump is president? That he won. Are we going to say it got them stole? Because at this point, we got to be if that is the case, we got to be sure. We have to have evidence, and we have to have people there awaiting to see such evidence. When 2020 came by and Trump was crying that it got them stole before that election was even over, 6 months before Election Day, he said the only way he's going to win, the only way he's going to lose is because they cheat and steal and bullshit. Which he still keeps saying. They went and did 60 plus lawsuits to contest the election, and none of them passed. With Democratic and Republican and Trump appointed judges tossing these cases out. Came up with a scheme of fake electors. Incited the crowd on January 6th to attack the Capitol on the day of the certification of the votes. If 2024 goes down and Trump wins, what are we going to do, Democrats? I made it clear that I will acknowledge him as my president because he will be the 47th president of the United States. And until I actually see, because I don't want to go down the emotional route of claiming Russiagate. Because that, as much as we would like to believe that there was some big conspiratorial thing, that there was a lot of links in the chain here that drives our imagination to think that something was untoward, that something was happening with Russia and Trump and things happened. No, it didn't. So I think the best evidence of anything that Russia did was having their hackers hack the Newsweek website when they were posting the story upon Trump doing business with Cuba during the embargo, which I always consider that to be evidence of Russian involvement, and doing the troll farms of them just pushing fake bullshit online and social medias, both of which is things that have been happening in prior elections for various forms, various governments, including Russia. But I don't think that constitutes as an election interference, which is the buzzword of the Trump himself and his campaign. Anything that is going against him in one form or another, including interviews like 60 Minutes that they edited somehow. They edited. Of course they edit this. They edit for you, asshole. But they edited so it's election interference. Election interference. You don't know what election interference is. And let me throw out the simple definition of election interference. Election interference, simple fact, is the interference of you being able to go out and vote. Someone influencing through physical means of blocking your way or doing some sort of, misinformation or disinformation to prevent you from voting. That's the interference. It's interfering you from voting. Her having an interview on 60 Minutes is not election interference. How the interview went one way or another is not election interference. And by the way, former President Jackhole, you were invited to go on 60 Minutes too. As they had done since the 1968 presidential election season of Richard Nixon and Mondale. I think it was Mondale. Anyway. But he didn't go on because he's a cowardly little shit. And I don't miss words about that. For someone who claimed that Kamala Harris wasn't doing enough interviews and that she didn't have any answers and she's not very intelligent, at least she can hold down a complete sentence that all spans with a complete thought, unlike you, Grampy. Some people will go, why are you going insulting his age? Because when things were happening with Biden. You know what? I acknowledge that Biden was in decline, and the reason why I'm going after Trump over his age now is because he is showing that decline in more profound manner, and people are going, tra-la-la, I don't see any of this, no. When he did his stunt at McDonald's, the pictures of him, he looked like an old guy who did not plan his retirement, so that he's going to have to work till death. And then I took a picture and put it on Middle America, which is the place that I admin from Vin and Sori's. Check out Vin and Sori. They are awesome people. They do political videos on YouTube as well as they do music reviews. And good plug out there for good people. Anyway. I posted a picture on Middle America of him at McDonald's pretending to work. And I said something to the effect of, like I said, he looked like somebody a poor old guy who did not manage his retirement, so now he has to work till death. Then I go, oh shit, this is me in 30 years. Because, I think I'm going to be continuing to work until I'm a head in a jar. And then they're going to take my little head in that jar, and they're going to use me as a doorstop, because I'll still be working even after I'm dead. Be that as it may. So Democrats, what are you going to do? What are we going to do? As I said, I'm going to acknowledge him as my president. But it's not going to stop my criticism. Because here's the thing. The reasons I will try to say this with some confidence, though I'm not going to speak for anybody else. So don't assume I'm going to monolithically just generalize like a lazy ass everyone else's opinions, especially those who are anti-Trump. But I will say, at least with some form of confidence on this point, a lot of the stuff that we have problems with Trump, especially the ones that are coming up recently in his behavior, managed words, etc., etc., if we do not continue to keep an eye vigilantly on him for any of these stuff that we are worrying about, then all this is just for politics. And that is no different than what the other side of the tribal line does. Where they will say the most horrible shit about a rival candidate of a Democratic persuasion in and up to the point of the election. And then it just sort of disappears after the election because, well, we didn't matter. We didn't mean that. Like even it doesn't have to be Democrats. It could be just primary between other Republicans or other Democrats or Democrats and Democrats, etc. Where, in the primary section, they will say, especially for Republicans concerning Trump, like the only ones that had balls, which was Chris Christie, who I think is still anti-Trump, and Nikki Haley, who's now vacillating. And she was barely anti-Trump, but she did say that he was unstable and he was unfit to be president again, and yet here she is. So how do we believe anything she says at that point? However, what do we do? Do we give up on our points that we have held as a fear of what he will do as president? Do we say, oh, well, that was just because of the election. We don't really think any of that's going to happen. Or are we actually serious upon these worries, and are we going to watch? And are we going to wait? And are we going to point them out? Even if us pointing them out is us screaming into the wind because no one is hearing us and no one cares. Now flip it around. Republicans. When Trump wins, are you just going to be happy that you got to own the libs again? Are you going to ignore any of the warning signs that when we see them, we are going to point them out? Or because your side won, it doesn't matter what he does. It clearly doesn't matter what he says. I sometimes had this running thought of not only Trump but of Biden at the time when he was still running, or actually I was actually thinking of this in 2020 because I thought Biden and Trump to around the same extent was too old, and one of the justifications of me even voting for Biden, outside of the fact that was a vote against Trump, which was the primary motivation, but one of the reasons that I felt a modicum of comfort for someone I was going to vote for that I did not pick as my fourth person I would vote for on the Democratic side was that even in his decline, which was apparent, not as bad as it looked at that debate, but was still apparent, that you would say to yourself, well, at least he will have smart people around him. That he can still go up, he can still do a great speech, but for the day-to-day working, he'll have good people around him that will keep him in the line. That, unfortunately, I will use the same term as I used Trump, that will handle him. Not to say that Biden is, out on the farm mentally. And I don't even think that that's true now, but it is true that he is in such decline that it's not possible. It's no longer possible for him to be, running the stress of the day-to-day of being president and not lose the point of view and the scope and the thread. Do you hope Republicans, not Trump supporters, Republicans, the Republicans who are going to vote for Trump, do you hope that he will have good people around him? Trump, by all accounts, is not looking for the best people anymore. He's looking for the loyal people. That will be what would be best for him. Not best for you, not best for this country, best for him. That will push his agenda. His agenda is for him. His agenda. Whatever he possibly could do for you is coincidental, happenstance. Then maybe somewhere down the line you'll get a benefit outside of the lip service. Because again, he will talk the good game. He did that the first 4 years. But the action in that first presidential run? No, there wasn't. See, one of the things that should help people with their decision process when it comes to Donald Trump running and becoming president again is that you got the first 4 years. The first 4 years, you can try to label that he had a good economy and he somehow magically did that. Well, first of all, he got the good economy out of Barack Obama, who turned around a bad economy into a good economy from what happened prior under Bush. But nothing that Trump did himself maintained that good economy. Because, hate to break it to people, again, for those who don't take civics, someone in the White House does not have the sheer force of will and power to change the economy. Especially a global economy that we are a part of. It takes the economics of time, if it's something that the government does get involved in, that has his hand in terms of tariffs and taxes and this and that, it takes the parties in the House and the Senate for the legislative that the president will then sign. Things go up and down, not because of the president. Trump, as president, touted whenever the stock market was great because he does think that that's because of him. Yay! I did that! I totally did that by sitting in this chair and spinning round and around and blowing bubbles in my chocolate milk. Me doing that made the economy great. There's no evidence of that. And of course, are you better than you were 4 years ago is a laugh, because 4 years ago we were in grips of COVID and people were dying daily. In great numbers daily. During the same time as he was sending over COVID test machines that were a rarity here, that we were needing here, he sent to Russia for the personal use of Vladimir Putin. Not even for the people, just for him. One of the reasons why I don't buy that 4 years ago thing, and not just because of COVID, because here's the thing. They complain about the economy now. That is the whole economy is destroyed, the government's destroyed, Kamala Harris did it. Joe Biden's there, but now that Kamala Harris is totally her. By the time Trump left office, he had lost 2 million jobs. We're losing jobs. Now, if the recovery from COVID, if you're going to ignore that, and say Biden didn't do anything, that everything recovered on its own, then it would go back to the levels prior to COVID, right? Including job loss and job creation. It would be just at that. Biden returning it, the Biden administration coming back for recovery, build back better, etc., etc. If it was just even Steven recovering the jobs that was lost, then you could say that now it's just the natural response to the recovery, the global recovery, okay? Problem with that is that in Trump's 2 years, or the 2 million that he lost at the time he left office, to now, Biden's administration, if we're giving credit to the presidents of the economy, Biden not only made back the jobs that were lost, but a further 10 million jobs. You talk about the inflation? Yeah, the inflation was bad. Inflation is bad in certain places. We're not going to deny that is existence. However, inflation levels are now down to 2021. Prices going up are still high. That is less to do with the actual inflation of items than it is of certain companies still spiking the prices up, which is going to where Harris is pushing for price gouging, against price gouging. To which, that's a communist, socialist, fascist thing. Gotta do something. Because, yeah, prices are high. But again, I won't blame Donald Trump for the prices being high during his administration as I would blame Biden. I personally do not think a president himself or herself is the contributing factor in causing the prices to be high one way or another. And again, this is a global economy. And as far as the economics of countries, of nations go, we are still in a better position than any other country that was affected. Last week, I was on my vacation. I passed my birthday. I turned 47. I am on the other side of the middle-age gap now. I'm staring at the horizon of 50, and where I no longer becoming older. I will be old. And I was going down to visit family in North Carolina and South Carolina. None of the places that was hit by Hurricane Helena. I was a bit east. Those were things that were happening in the western parts of those states. So I didn't see any of the deserted wasteland that FEMA left. Sorry. But I noticed that the prices of gas was down a bit considerably compared to where it was in the area I live, which is D.C. area, Northern Virginia. Now, of course, we kept hearing over and over again about places that Trump says that the gas is up to $8 an hour. He will return gas. He will return power. I just found it notable. But even if you look at that, even look at the decrease in the gas prices, people will just still say the negative. And there's a theory that I have is that we get into the cycle where Trump becomes president. If we stay status quo, then that means, well, things didn't get any worse, so things kind of improved, so yay. We stay status quo under Harris. Oh, she's destroying the economy. It's all ruins. This is all over. It's game over, man. But it's the same thing. It's just the way you're spinning it. So Republicans, going back to the original point here, are you going to turn the blind eye to the things that we on the Democratic side fears in the return of a Donald Trump? Are you only making that vote because of the economy? and everything else doesn't matter. Any social media bullshit thing that he says, like about migrants or any of the other business or the enemy within or any of that other stuff, none of that matters, only the economy. Because you think personally that he single-handedly, personally himself is going to make the economy improve by sheer force of will. Because I have to remind you, my gentle snowflakes, my ladies and jelly spoons, is that when he was president, no matter how much he talked tough, especially on Twitter, he did no action. When a serious event comes down, like a mass shooting, where he will gather people together and he held this photo up, the cameras were on him, and then he will mock the Republicans for being weak to like, you're afraid of the NRA, aren't you? And then one call from the NRA, and then all of a sudden his little tiny balls gets a little bit tinier, and then he pulls away. Same thing goes with healthcare. He'll whine about Obamacare, but then he will not take any responsibility and just says, "That's up on you legislators. You have to do it. I'll be over here tweeting." Are you going to ignore what we say when they come to pass? Because I am not one of these people that says if Trump comes to office, I'm going to leave this country. No. And, in a point of self-realization of my own situations, in terms of who I am and what I am, the worst things to happen under a Trump administration, the things that people perceive to be what will happen to certain people, my demographic is the least likely to be harmed. And because as a white, middle-aged, cis hetero man, I am the last demographic that is going to have any fury, anything that happened to us, outside of, going after us for our political positions. That doesn't mean that I can't have empathy for those that might get hit. Might get hit one way or the other. This is a scary time. And we are pointing out the scary points. The what-ifs. One of the things I always didn't like about politics is the what-ifs. And both sides do this. The gloom of doom of what happened if person A gets into a position of power as opposed to person B. And we're guilty of it on the Democratic side as the Republican side is as guilty of it. And, I do get frustrated with that, but the problem when it comes to Trump is that a lot of the things that we were worried about in 2016 to 2020, they did come to pass. And we did point them out. If any of the stuff that we are concerned about with Trump, in terms of tariffs, sort of like turning the government, like turning the DOJ back out against his political rivals and enemies, putting Eileen Cannon up as Supreme Court or Attorney General, because she who dismissed his case is qualified, even though she just relatively recently got her judgeship. Or the mass deportation and going after legal migrants who are legally protected here, who are doing nothing wrong. I suppose as a middle-aged white man, I'm supposed to ignore that because none of that stuff has happened to me. I'm not supposed to have any form of fucking empathy for other people and not point it out when things like that happen. You're going to get back what you lost. What did you lose? What did you lose that you're going to get back when Donald Trump becomes president again? In a sane world full of responsible people, this should not be this close. Sane and responsible people of the United States sees Donald Trump, and no matter how much, if he was in his prime, this would be a completely different conversation. But anything that you want him to do, do you really want it to be done at the cause of someone who's such a hedonistic plutocrat, who you deify, who has broken the 7 deadly sins that was taught by medieval Catholics? Are you going to find the benefit that you will have for yourself in all the self-serving bullshit that he's doing only for himself? That you'll find perhaps a scrap that falls from the table that you can find benefit off of. That he can wipe his mouth with a napkin and throws it on the floor, and you grab it. Little benefit. There's things that are slogans that he's pushing. The tariffs is a slogan. The no tax on tips is a slogan. Taking the measures that would take millions off of income tax. But then they'll get hit by the tariffs. And so whatever they're not going to pay in their taxes, they're going to pay at the checkout. What will you do, Republicans, if he wins, but we Democrats are right? And the things that we worry about happening in this country will happen under Trump. And we point them out one by one by one by one. Will you ignore it? For the pride of your tribe? Because that's getting old. And that is destroying our country more than even Donald Trump. You going to ignore that? For the sake of the Republican Party? For the sake of your clan? For the sake of what you think of your particular portion of the country? Could the country improve under Trump? Sure. Because the country can improve under insert your name here for president. Because things rise and fall. And even if a president is doing anything proactive, it still requires the House and the Senate. It still requires legislation. It still requires the global economy to be working one way or the other way, to going with the trends. But does not mean that things rise and fall because of the actions or inactions of a single individual. With the exceptions of some things like COVID, that we can actually blame Donald Trump for, not for the disease itself. Don't get that twisted, but his response to muddying the water because he wanted it to be politically representative of him. Until the press went the other way, and then it became, well, COVID will just go away by April. When it gets warmer, it will just disappear. Poof. And it didn't do it. And the missteps and mishandlings of that, we can blame that. Because that's righteous to blame that. So Democrats, in summation of this, since this is going to an hour as usual, Democrats think of this in terms of Donald Trump succeeding and becoming president. Have no illusions, no matter how bad it's turning out for him, that he still has every chance of winning the election. What will you do? Will you stay diligent like I am? Or I'll try to be? Or maybe I'll just give up and just fuck. Your country, You deal with it. Still stay in this country. But no longer fighting, because what's the point? Republicans, if you do happen Donald Trump to win, and the things that we worry about does come to pass, are they even things you want to happen? Because that's the thing. One of the things I as a theory goes with people who were Trump voters or Trump supporters who are very advocates who make it personal for them for Trump to succeed because that means they succeed. Their vote is a representation of their support for Donald Trump. So anything Trump does represents them back. Do you want us to think this is what you want? As much as you have an issue with the border, do you want a mass deportation of 20 million people? That, since illegal immigrants do not glow in the dark, and the vast majority of them don't exactly go to their governmental offices and register as illegal, that this could be very chaotic and very bloody and very costly. Do you want that to happen? Are you so fearful of anything woke that you would want the Department of Education just simply eliminated? And so there won't be any guidelines, any standardized anything. That the byproduct of you saving your poor, precious, impressionable, innocent child from any knowledge that you don't want them to ever learn is at the cost of having good teachers teaching actual physical histories and mathematics and English, teaching good literature. Have that all go away so that you, despite the fact that you don't want the federal government doing anything with the education, will still have an education that is under the table run by the state. Because bear in mind, we're already seeing that happening in Oklahoma, where the superintendent is trying to hawk Bibles to be taught in schools in every subject. Because the Bible is American history. Even though it was thousands and thousands of years before America was even a thing, but be that as it may, American history. And not just any Bibles, no. The Trump Bible. Do you want that? Do you want the Trump Bibles in your children's schools for them to read? Where, it does have the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution in there. But never mind actually teaching your child when they're reading through the Bible and they get to the point of the Constitution at the start, where in the first line of the first sentence of the First Amendment of the United States is that there will be no recognizing of a state religion. And will you ignore that line when you are reading this book to your child? You're not going to bring up the very massive contradiction in terms of how the Constitution is in a Bible with this line that says the state will not sanction or recognize a state religion, because that's a contradiction. That is actually in violation of the First Amendment. Will you explain that to your child? Or will you just gloss that over and then, hey, look, the Second Amendment? Will you be so adamant that homosexuality, transgender, any of the LGBTQ have no representation in life for you and your family and your children, that shove them right back into the closet so it can be comfortable again to disparage them and to hate on anyone, including your members of your own family that might grow up and might be gay or lesbian or transgender. People who are developing, children who are developing and finding out that perhaps they are or not. You don't want any of that to happen. And of course you want to blame others as opposed to being their own nature. Or any of the other 1,001 shocks that flesh is heir to. Though, then again, Shakespeare and Hamlet might be too woke. What will you do if you wake up one day with Trump being president and have the shocking revelation that we were right? Will you be adults and admit to it? Or will you play the game and just back your leader's play? Discount our concerns, discount our worries, just say it's work trash, people with Trump derangement syndrome, discount it, don't even consider it, don't even think about it. Everything is just fluffy bunnies and happy dandelions for the rest of your lives. Because I'll tell you this, flip side of the coin, at least from my point of view, if anything untoward goes on as a Kamala Harris as president, I am not going to sit back and ignore it and turn blinders on. I have not done that for Biden. If anyone has ever watched any of my videos to show how I can be critical of Biden, that I have not shied away the idea of anyone investigating Joe Biden or Hunter Biden. Because I don't think anyone should shy away from an investigation if you believe someone has done wrong. But the problem is that people who are investigating now or wanting to investigate or advocate just are saying investigations. And if they really want to follow through, they're only doing that for political purposes. Which goes back the other way around for Donald Trump with all his investigations and so forth. Because if Democrats are just going to be satisfied with Kamala Harris winning, and they no longer care about any of these other investigations that are happening with Trump or any of these trials or any of these court cases, if you no longer care because Trump is no longer in office, then you are a political hack, my fellow Democrats. Then that tells not only Republicans and independents and other Democrats and myself that all that stuff that we were upset about or upset that thought he broke the law, that doesn't matter because he's no longer president. So you just, if you believe that and just, that goes away, and you're fine with it going away, then that proves that all of it was political. You know, it's easy to make the acknowledgement that many of these cases that he went against is politically motivated, but if he still broke the law, he still broke the law. I love this idea of, like, somebody breaks a law, but we're not going to prosecute because there might be a political component to it. Because he wouldn't be indicted if it wasn't politics involved. And so, you are free to break the law, in whatever law that may be, so long as there isn't a political component to it. If the thing was reversed the other way, and Biden or insert name Democrat here was investigated for something, and the investigation proves enough for the point that there being an indictment that he or she may have in fact broke the law. If they broke the law, they broke the law. They go to trial. The government has to prove that they broke the law because it's innocent until proven guilty, which includes Trump. If you're going to brush it under the table because your side won, then none of that was serious. If you think the things that Trump has been put on trial for is serious, documents, the upping and lowering of the cost of his real estate to defraud the taxes, to doing the shell companies and backward ways of paying for Stormy Daniels when, in legal terms, if he just paid her with his own money, none of that shit would be illegal. But he did it the other way because he used campaign funds. If none of that was, if he didn't break the law on any of that, but that came up anyway, and that's politically motivated, then that just wasted the time of everybody. But if he did break the law, if those laws are broken, or mishandled or mismined, or his being liable for sexual assault and all that, if that's all serious, up to the point of it being election, and it's no longer serious to you after the election, you are a political hack. Either it's all righteous, or was righteous to the point where it was advantageous to feel like it's righteous in terms of election. Let's try to have some integrity. I know that's hard because that would also would have the byproduct of having to concede when a point is wrong or somebody's in error. We don't like to say that we're wrong. We don't like to say we're in error. But here's the thing. If Trump becomes president again, I will tell you this. I hope I am wrong for the things that I am concerned about him being president. I hope I am wrong. Because if I'm not, then God helps this country. If I'm right. I really put a very nice, lovely, happy spin on the ends of these videos. The ranter rants, because the urge to rant is always rising. We got less than 2 weeks to go. Let's see what happens. See you guys.